We need to get in Dilip Bhatt in the discussion, Joint Managing Director at Prabhudas Lilladher, joins us right now on the show. Dilip, good afternoon. Thanks for joining in. You know, Dilip, somehow the standout feature for me this earnings season has been that there are nifty names which have come out with results which the market has taken a little bit of time to digest, and then the stocks have either moved up or down about 10% in a single day. It's happened a number of times this earnings season, and today is no different. Hindalco showing a 12% up move after the results that came out yesterday.
Neeraj, I think that's absolutely right. I think it's a good observation. I think what market is really factoring in at the moment and rewarding or punishing depending upon how the results have been, and it's more so I would say a part is because of knee-jerk reaction, and also because of the under ownership of some of these stocks or over ownership of these stocks. But for example, Larsen Toubro or Hindalco was a very classic case where they were very much under owned. And I think a good surprise on the results have really made people really go and try to buy this stock at these levels. But I think having said that, one should definitely see a sustainable kind of scenario, whether that is being played out if you have to really go beyond those couple of days when the stocks have moved up or down by 8 to 10%. So I think that becomes a slightly tougher call. That is where the pick and choose happens. For example, I may not be very comfortable with Hindalco, though I personally feel that if you tell me there's another scope for another 10% rise from the current level, very much there. But you know, on a secular basis, I would still like to avoid some of these names. But Larsen and Toubro, interestingly, looks good. So I am still apprehensive that the next couple of quarters may not show this kind of growth. But still, I think if that is one stock, if you really have to own in this infra, capital goods, or any of those space with a good market size, you're going to own Larsen and Toubro. So I think it's a mixed bag. But yes, certainly I think the markets have given a very knee-jerk strong reaction.
Okay, Dilip, what earnings has surprised you this earnings season? So I heard you speak about how there has been a surprise in an under ownership in an L&T and a Hindalco and a few others. But leave aside an L&T, what else has really surprised you and made you change your view? It could be a large cap, it could be a large mid cap.
Well, I think something like even SBI has surprised, though I have not changed my view, Neeraj, on SBI at the moment. But I think still it has given a very positive surprise as far as the asset quality goes. And that holds out a promise that maybe the worst is behind us as far as the asset quality is concerned. So I think SBI is one of the stocks where we were really surprised. I think on a negative side, we were very, very much surprised by both Axis as well as ICICI Bank. You know, both of them have really shown that the asset quality can really go from bad to worse, and maybe the markets had been ignoring all the while and giving them a good premium. But you know, come to think of it, that ICICI has 5.82% gross NPA, which is just a tad behind what SBI has really shown of 6.5%. So you know, it tells a lot. So these two results were pretty shocking, not just in terms of actual result, but the kind of disclosure that they have made, that maybe the worst is yet to be played out in some of these stocks. So I think as far as Axis and ICICI Bank goes, though they remain a stock to be bought on the dips, but certainly, you know, from being so overtly positive on these stocks, you just tend to become a lot more cautious and look at a suitable time to buy the stock.
Does the converse hold true for PSU banks? I mean, do those numbers make you believe, you know, how bad can it get from here?
So there are two things in PSU banks. One is that, okay, even if the way Axis Bank and ICICI has put out a watch list, I'm sure the scenario won't be much different for some of these PSU banks, though a lot of things have been written down. But I think the PSU banks, there are two other things. One is that the core parameters, the credit growth is really not happening. And the worry is, even if the business really picks up, whether they will be very timely capitalized and adequately capitalized for them to really, start being in the business in a very serious way. Otherwise, the fear always will remain that what has happened in the last 1.5 years is these banks have ceded market share to the private sector banks, and the way the gross NPAs are really panning out, it might not provide them with adequate capital to do a proper business should the circumstances arise.
Okay, Dilip, stay on. So much more to speak about. Before I get to Dilip Bhatt, want to mark MTNL is up 11%, but there is a large one-off that has led to this profit numbers for MTNL too. That is not to say that the stock shouldn't do, because you'll hear the management, they are planning some restructuring and bringing up the organization once again to better levels. But the stock is up 10% because of a PAT number flash that came in, and quite frankly, that's aided by a lot of one-offs out there. However, Dilip, getting back to the discussion at hand, an interesting trend that we spotted, Dilip, last 1.5 months, a lot of mid-sized pharma names are now starting to get some clearances from the US FDA. Started off with Indoco getting a couple of clearances for the Goa plants. Today, Claris Life has got an EIR. Granules got some approval of one of their plants as well. You reckon that the situation could start to improve, and how crucial would it be for any of these companies which have gotten the US FDA clearances?
Neeraj, surely they are very important, but it's very difficult to build a pattern for any of these things, because we have seen over last 2 or 3 years that the pattern of approval is something which is non-linear in nature, and it still comes in spurts, and it's very difficult to really put it in a proper way and say that okay, this particular thing looks good. But yes, for the mid-cap companies, it's a huge relief, because they have been consuming a lot of cash to really get the approvals, and they have been waiting for a pretty long time. But not just the mid-cap, I think even in the front line there are still a host of companies which are still awaiting the approvals to come, and somehow the other that still seems to be a very long waiting period, except for somebody like an Aurobindo, where we hear the frequency of approval has really increased. But having said that, I think in the mid-cap space of the pharma, I would still be a little careful, and I think I would still be very selective. Something like a Jubilant Life Science is something which really interests us a lot, which I think which has got a good run ahead. I'm not banking so many things on the approval as far as that company goes, but still I think on a longer term basis that company looks interesting.
Speaking of Jubilant, Dilip, the other one is sulking today, and why not? The same store sales growth at a mere 3.2%. What's happening in this stock? Higher prices, we've seen the promoter selling. The same store sales growth isn't quite working out really well. And the valuations might not be very terribly expensive, are not very cheap either. What do you do here?
Well, I think really speaking, we are not very closely tracking this particular company, and at the same time I think we really feel that the valuations are also not very cheap, and unless and until the growth really comes back in a very visible way, it's very difficult to take a buy call on this. There is no doubt that the return parameter still continues to be very strongly in favor of them.
Did L&T change the way you're looking at the entire sector? I know, of course, L&T's exaggerated move pretty much reflected the fact that things are looking up for the business, but does it change the overall view on the sector as well? I mean, we had a small company like I think PNC Infratech also come out with a decent set of numbers. So that infrastructure story and within it, segments, do you think that they will come at play with the signs that are being seen on the ground?
very much. I think one must say about this government that they understand this infra space so well, and the way they have been really giving out orders, after taking all due precautions and handing out the orders in a way by which the companies who are taking these orders to execute can really complete it, unlike what happened in the past when a lot of projects got stuck midway through. So I think this is one space where we will see good order inflows, we'll see fair amount of execution really happening, and I think this sector will, and even the payment terms, in my opinion, will really ease off. The working capital cycle, which was so elongated in the earlier time, it probably will come down, so the cash flows will look much better in some of these companies. So I think this space still has will attract a lot of attention, largely because of overall macro environment.
Take a moment to thank you for joining in today and giving us your thoughts and your recommendations. Really good having you, Dilip Bhatt, and look forward to have you more often on this forum.
Always a pleasure.
All right, that's Dilip Bhatt of Prabhudas Lilladher with his thoughts.